And we are live with today's N10-008 Network Plus study group. It is the pre-show. We've got 10 minutes. You can see on the big clock, we're at 11:50, almost 11:51, and we've got another few minutes to work through. We'll make sure everything's working fine here. I'm looking at some messages I got from YouTube as we were starting up. YouTube was complaining that wasn't receiving enough video. Well, we're going to fix that. We will have tons of video to send through. So we got a lot to work on. Well, thanks for being here, everybody. If you are watching this in the replay, you can probably fast forward about 10 minutes, or you can enjoy us in the pre-show, discussing, talking, doing all of those. No cartoons. I can sing for you. Would you like that? The answer is no, you would not. That's why I don't. Okay, cameras. Oh, the laptop's not up. Get the laptop up right here. There it is. Everything else looks good. Yeah, you can ask general questions right now. We're just sort of hanging out and making sure recordings are going. Let's make sure they are. They are. Make sure graphics look good. It does. We're in pretty good. Will I be making a practice test for the Network Plus? I'd like to. It's really more about, is there enough time to make practice tests? I think there is enough time. I'm just not sure when that time will be. But I do have plans. Honest. No, really. I do have plans to make Network Plus practice exams. I've just not gotten there yet. But I will be writing them. They will be happening eventually someday. That's my plan. Now, will that come to fruition? I would like to think so. Let's have happy thoughts. Let's think about what can be and figure out what's there. There is quite a bit. What day in December does the N10-008 retire? I think it's the 20th, right? Let's have a look. 20th, the December the 20th. 2020. That's the day that they will retire the N10-008 in December. So you got a little bit of time. You're going down to the last day, aren't you? You're working this all the way to the very end to figure out the details. We'll see if that's the case. But that is the date, and that is when the last day you can take that N10-008 will be. That is the retirement date. We got a lot to go through before then, and I don't know. This might be the last 008 live stream we do for our study groups. I think I might transition over to the 009 next month. I think it'd be a good time to do it. I think we'll probably make that happen. Hey, Mal, thanks for making it. Good to see you again. Hope things are doing okay down in the islands since all of that weather we've had over the last number of months. Hope everything's okay with you. Do I think A+ is needed before the Network Plus? Well, not technically needed, but I think it's useful to have some of that background, but it's not incredibly necessary. It's certainly not a prerequisite for that. Is the 009 info already available? Well, our course notes are available. Thanks for asking, because here's course notes. Can't see them. Can't see them from where you are. There's the course notes for the 009. They've been out for a while. And pretty much all of the videos are coming along nicely. I think we have about 60 videos out on the 009 currently. And we finished with our primary production for that. So there's no more shooting of the 009. Everything is in the can, so to speak. It's in a bunch of files here. And I'm just going through and I'm still editing. I just edit. That's all I do now is I just edit. There's just a lot of chaos in my world right now that I have to kind of compartmentalize. And so they're going out in batches. So over the last week, we probably put out about 20 videos. So we plan to do another 20, and then we'll pretty much be done. I'd hope to have them all finished by Saturday, by the end of this month. That's not going to happen because I have way too many. I have probably 20 more to edit, but we're getting there and they are finished. I just need to edit. My part of talking is done. Really, it's the easy part now. The editing is the easy part. Really shooting the video is kind of easy too. The hard part's really creating the content prior to shooting the video interestingly enough. Do we have a plan to celebrate 1 million YouTube subscribers? It is close. According to Social Blade, I think the last number I saw was somewhere around November of hitting the 1 million subscribers. I don't tend to focus on those numbers so much as a goal. I tend to look at them as a representation of how we are doing. And 1 million it's ridiculous. It's a number I would have never considered, never thought of when we started this many, many moons ago. So it's great to see it. It is very gratifying to see that. And we have to do something, either live stream or something else to have this here. We'll figure it out. I do need one more screen. You can't see it. I currently have a screen up behind the desk because there's more to the room behind that. I have the screen up because it helps with some noise that I was doing. I was getting during the recording process, and that takes care of some of the noise. But once that comes down, there is another screen back there. To my point, there's a television back there. So we'll do that. Well, Mrs. Professor Messer, pie me in the face to celebrate. No, she will not. I mean, she probably would, but we will not be doing that. No, we don't need to make that happen. The 1 million is happy enough. We don't need to put a cherry on the top of that one, do we? Either figuratively or literally, I think. It is Labor Day weekend. This is all kind of worked. 009 study group coming down the pipe. I think that's next month. I think the 009 study group is what we start on. To be fair, a lot of the content between both of these is very, very similar. So a lot of what we'll do today would still apply to the 009. Some of it may not, but we'll have an all 009 there. Will I ever do YouTube memberships? I know that it's there. We have looked at that. It just did not seem like something that made sense for what we were doing. I think having the free videos available, having people have access to those, and then, what do I make additional for YouTube memberships? It just didn't seem like something we can do, and have it continuously be valuable to people. So we ended up sort of shelving it. We can always revisit at some other time, but it's not something we're really planning at the moment. Plans for the weekend besides video editing? No, video editing. I don't really know what a weekend is. I do this 7 days a week. So the weekend is how I keep track of what else is going on in the world. I consider, that means that today is Saturday. So that's what this is. So I know if I have to go out, I know I don't have to worry about a school zone. That's what Saturday is to me. that's I don't know. That's just the way it works. All right, we got about a minute and a half before we get started here. We're at 11:58. So should you take the A+ first and then the 009 for Network Plus? You could. It's not required though. And I guess it really depends on what you're trying to do. Is there a particular position you're looking for? Is there a particular job you're working for? That usually dictates which direction you go with certifications. Okay, we are just about ready to get going. We've got in less than a minute. We got a lot going on. I got recordings going. Let's do a final check. Cameras look good. Questions are up. That's what you see here in front of me. And we can that's where you would go to answer questions. So if you wanted to pop open a new browser window, there's your URL. So you can make that happen. ProfessorMesser.com/QA. And you'll hear that many times today. The /QA. I think I'm a little hoarse from yesterday. We did a back-to-back. We did Security Plus yesterday. We're doing Network Plus today to finish the month out. With that, though, I think we're in pretty good shape for getting things started. Let's see if I can get Keynote running. Let's get a big green light. Green light. I upgraded my laptop, so I wasn't quite sure if we were going to get the green light. You saw the flash here. We're already, there we go. That's where I want to be. And I think we can do a live stream, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 2024 Professor Messer N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. This is the study group where I ask you questions about topics that come from the N10-008 Network Plus exam objectives. And in this first hour, we get to see how well you know some of those topics. So put your thinking caps on, as they say, and we will be talking about some of those in just a moment. Also, in the second hour, we will provide you with a chance to ask me a question. So in the first hour, I ask the questions. In the second hour, you ask the questions. You can submit those questions at any time from the URL that we have here, professormesser.com/QA. You can also use the Vevox.app links that are on your screen as well. Either one of those works. They all go to the same place. You can easily find those to be able to make that happen. We have a lot of things to go through, so why don't we get started with those? I will remind you, of course, that we have every minute of every one of our training videos available for you to watch for free on YouTube. Only on the internet could you do something like this. You can watch all of those at our YouTube channel. You'll find that at professormesser.com/YouTube. And while you're there, we would love it if you would give those videos a thumbs up. And if you like them, you might even want to subscribe to the channel, which would be pretty awesome as well. We do have a weekly Network Plus pop quiz question that we send out through email. We also post those on the service formerly known as Twitter, and you can go to professormesser.com/Twitter for that. We have the same questions available with a pretty picture over on Instagram. Go to professormesser.com/Instagram. So as many of you are probably aware, there are 2 Network Plus exams that you could take right now. Maybe you weren't aware. Now you are. So at on September 15th of 2021, so 3 years ago, we had the release of the N10-008. That's the version number for one of the currently available Network Plus exams. This is an exam version, though, that retires on December the 20th of 2024. So that's December. We are here at the end of August. It might as well be the beginning of September. September, October, November, December. You got about 3.5 months. That's really about it. And it's during the holiday season. So if you are starting your Network Plus studies right now, this would probably not be the version that I would recommend for you. Instead, I would recommend a different version of the Network Plus exam. It's this version, the N10-009. The N10-009 was released in June, so it's a relatively new certification exam. And of course, these usually stick around for about 3.5 years, which means that the estimated retirement for the N10-009 will be somewhere around the 4th calendar quarter of 2027. So the end of the year in 2027, which means you have plenty of time to study for that version of the exam, which is why that's the version that I recommend that you take. Both of those exams are formatted exactly the same way. They are 90 minutes in length. You have a maximum of 90 questions that you could get on this exam. You could get fewer than 90 questions, and you need to earn a score of 720 on a scale from 100 to 900. That's the same for both the N10-008 and the N10-009. So there's no advantage or disadvantage from a scoring perspective to go to either one of those. The real question is, do you have enough time to study and take the exam without maybe somebody throwing a wrench into everything? Normally, I would think most people can get through it in 2 to 3 months, but sometimes, especially near the end of the year, you've got the holidays, there's events going on, you're traveling to see family. The 009 might be a better choice for you. The exam itself consists of both multiple choice questions and performance-based questions, and we'll talk more about performance-based questions in just a bit. Whether you're going to take the N10-008 or the N10-009, we have study materials available on our site that can help you. Of course, our entire course is available for you to watch for free. We have course notes available. We have a number of different downloadable video and audio tools that you can grab from our website. A lot of things to look at. If you're taking the 008, the full success bundle is there. And for 009, the success bundle will be there also shortly. It'll be over in the next coming weeks, I would imagine. You'll see one available for that. We also have this live stream available for you to watch immediately afterwards on YouTube. It's automatically archived there. And then I will upload an audio-only version of this in a podcast format. So if you have a podcast listening program, you can add it by going to this URL, professormesser.com/podcast, and you can add it to your favorite podcast listening program. If you're on Spotify or some other type of streaming audio service, you can also search for Professor Messer there, and the podcasts are also available on those services. And if there's a service you would like to find us on that you cannot find us, let me know. We'll add it to that one as well. It's a great way to keep up with what we're doing here. We also have podcast links for our A+ and Network Plus and Security Plus study groups there as well. Also, sometime in the next day or so, you'll notice that the YouTube video description will be updated with a series of timestamps so that you can find the exact question and answer that you might be looking for. These don't happen automatically. We really spend a lot of time making sure we get these exactly right. And it's my marketing manager, Lori, who does this for you. So if you are someone who enjoys those timestamps, that's where they come from. Lori's watching this replay right now. Hi, Lori. Everybody say hi to Lori. She's watching the chat go by, probably at 2x speed, and putting those timestamps into the YouTube video description. So that's a great place to go if you need to find something, and you can go back years in these study groups and find all of those timestamps. Also, let you know that when we're not doing a live stream, you can usually find us over on our Discord. That's an easy thing to be added to. Simply go to professormesser.com/Discord, and that is both our real-time chat, and a lot of the times there's so many people there studying for their A+, their Network Plus, their Security Plus. They'll open up a chat room themselves. They'll open up a study room that we've got set up. They'll stream some of the things that they're watching. There'll be discussions about some of the topics from the exams. Sometimes someone will have a question and they'll jump down into one of the study groups. They'll discuss it over video and audio. It's a great way to study with people that are studying for exactly the same test as you. Come join that community. You can find us at professormesser.com/Discord. Got a lot to go through from that perspective there. So if we start thinking about the exam, eventually we will need to purchase the exam. We'll need to buy the exam and take that exam that we have coming up. If you are in the US or Canada, you could certainly go to the CompTIA website and pay full price, or you can go to professormesser.com/vouchers and get a discount on the same voucher. So that's another great thing to do if you're someone who is trying to find the right balance between taking the exam but not taking all of the money out of your wallet. This might be a good option for you. And we have those for all of the CompTIA exams. They are all discounted. The discount is already there. You don't need a special code. You don't need to add an extension into your browser or any of that nonsense. All you have to do is go to professormesser.com/vouchers. Not only do you get that professormesser.com/vouchers connection and have that discount, I also give you a little bit more that you can't get somewhere else. In fact, you will see that there is a exam hacks ebook that you can download after purchasing your voucher at our website that includes a number of tips and tricks that I've accumulated through the years to help me with my studies, and some tips and tricks you can use during the exam itself. Might make you a few extra points as you're going through that exam. It's always good to have a strategy. So that is available on our website. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. So I wonder if I have the right question on my screen here. Yes, I do. In fact, I didn't give you the question originally. So we're now going to step through a question and see if you're able to answer this question online. The question begins here. It asks, which of the following would best describe the hardware address of an access point? Well, that's a good question. What would describe the hardware address of the access point? Would that be an ESS ID, a VLAN ID, an IBSS, a BSS ID, or an SSID? There's a lot of IDs in here to be able to walk through. This is a question. Let's put up the link so you can get to it. Go pop open a new browser window, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your question there. Our standing rule, of course, is please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link that is on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. to lock in your answer. So the question again asks, which of the following would best describe the hardware address of an access point? Is it ESSID, VLAN ID, IBSS, BSSID, or SSID? This is a rewind question, by the way. It's a question from last month just to see if we're able to get in, able to answer the questions, make sure everything's working okay on your side, make sure everybody's happy with what they're seeing. And as we can see, I'm looking at the numbers accumulating up here in the upper right. Folks are finding their way in and locking in what they think is the right answer to this one. And if you were here last month, you might even remember what the answer is to this one, or maybe you don't, which has its own challenges, I think. I may not be able to remember this month to month. Maybe you're better than I am with remembering all of those things. So we'll have to see how you do. So let's now that we've had a chance to kind of pop in, put our vote in, figure this out, let's see what you think the answer is. The question again asks, which of the following would best describe the hardware address of an access point? Is that an ESSID, VLAN ID, IBSS, BSSID, or SSID? Well, let's see what you think the answer is. We will stop the poll, and we can see that 44% of you think it is a BSSID, 31% say it's an SSID, 13% say it's an IBSS, and then we have 8% with VLAN ID and 3% with ESSID. So you've got a number of different options to step through on this one. Let's talk about what these are. Whenever you're connecting to a wireless network, you see a bunch of names pop up of the wireless network. It might be a hotel name. It might be the name of the coffee shop. We refer to those as a service set identifier, or an SSID. Now, I don't know why we just don't call it a network name, but why would we do that when there's a perfectly good acronym we can apply to this? A service set identifier is the name of the network. So on this particular network, the name of the network that pops down that we select when we want to connect to this network is SGC1. That is the SSID. If you want to find the hardware address, though, of a particular access point, this is something like a MAC address might be in the world of wired Ethernet. We refer to that access point hardware address as a basic service set identifier, or BSSID. So think of that as the MAC address of the access point, because of course your network may have many different access points that are named SGC1. You might blanket your entire campus with tons of access points. There might be hundreds of access points, and those access points all might be the same wireless network of SGC1. But how do you tell them apart? You tell them apart with the basic service set identifier. And that goes back to the answer to this question that we were looking for. What would describe the hardware address of an access point? 44% of you said the basic service set identifier, and you would be right. That is the correct answer. That's the one we were looking for. 44% of you got that one absolutely correct. You can see why the 31% that said SSID were so close. That was exactly what you were hoping to find, but that's the name of the wireless network and not the MAC address or hardware address of that wireless access point. So one little letter kind of messes up the whole question. You have to really think about those letters and how they're used, because that's an important part of this. A number of times, and we talked about this yesterday in our Security Plus study group, many times on the exam, you have questions like this where the answers are all abbreviations. They're all acronyms. So you have to not only know what the acronym is, but such as a basic service set identifier. Even if you knew that BSSID was basic service set identifier, that doesn't actually say what the device does. It doesn't say what the acronym does. So you not only need to know the acronym and what the words are associated with that acronym, but it's also useful to know, what is that? How does it work? How do you apply it to a network? How is it used in the world of technology? Those are important considerations as well. And if you're putting together any type of flashcards, that's an important thing to put on those flashcards, because you will not, on your exam, you will not get a question that asks, what does BSSID stand for? You will never have a question like that on your exam. So that is why I tell you, go the next step with that. Go a little bit further with that and make sure you understand not only what the abbreviation stands for, but what it really means to use that technology on your network. Now, with that, I think this would be a good time to transition over into a different type of question. For those of you that know these exams from CompTIA, you're already familiar with this. But if you've never taken a CompTIA exam, you might be ready to walk into the exam room and take a bunch of multiple choice questions. And you certainly will take a lot of multiple choice questions. But before you get to the multiple choice questions, you will get a handful of what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. Performance-based questions are questions that really are anything but multiple choice. They might be a fill in the blank. They might put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. It might be a matching question. You might have to put things in a particular order. So it just depends on what CompTIA wants to throw at you that particular day. Now, the good part is that regardless of how they ask the question, all of the question topics will all come from your exam objectives. So as long as you know the exam objectives, in my mind, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. You will know the answer, whether it's a fill in the blank or you're working at the command prompt or whatever it happens to be. So I have for you, as we do with the first new question of every study group, I have for you a new performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you're ready for this. This performance-based question of the month asks, a technician would like to determine the number of hops to 1.1.1.1. Run a command to display this information. And you can see there's a command prompt here. So this is a very good place to start because this is effectively a fill in the blank for you. A technician would like to determine the number of hops to 1.1.1.1. That's an IP address. That's a real IP address, by the way. IP address is this 1.1.1.1. I believe that's a Cloudflare address. It's their DNS. It's a great DNS to use. It's very fast and very efficient. So, but you occasionally would like to know the best way to do this. Now, of course, always we want to answer this with the link that you see on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We instead want to put our answer in by visiting professormesser.com/QA. I will also tell you for this question, I made it kind of broad because I wanted to be able to make sure that you could choose multiple answers for this one. And there are multiple answers for this one. But of course, I want you to be able to answer it based on what the exam objectives might be for this. So see if you know what this answer might be. I'm going to take a sip here for a moment. I'm watching some of these answers come in. You folks are doing a great job with this particular question. There's some questions or some answers that came in that I take a little bit of that are not quite right. We'll talk about ones that are right, and we'll talk about the ones that are not right. But there's one always coming back in this link where folks are admittedly going back and forth over. There's a little bit of that happening. So we'll see if you happen to know what this is. But there are multiple choices that you could select, not just multiple options in different operating systems, but let's just say you're dealing with Windows, because you can see on the screen, you have to determine from that at that particular view of the world. So on this is the screen that you're on. What do you type into this screen to display this information? So some of you are giving me other operating systems that are not the operating system you see on the screen. I don't want to give too much away. So I'm really looking in context based on what you see here. What would you type in? And the good part about this is, now that I'm finally getting to the explanation, is there's multiple things you could type in at this prompt that could give you the answer to this question. So let's see how you do with this one and being able to work through it. As always, you can answer the question by visiting the link on your screen. Please go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in the answer. We'll have to see if you know what this one happens to be. And I'm going to show you multiple operating systems in the answer that I'm going to give to you, because I think it helps to apply this outwards to other operating systems. But I'm kind of giving you a prompt on the screen just to see if you can help with working through this. So we'll have to see if that's the case. ProfessorMesser.com/QA would be a great place to lock this one in. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a technician would like to determine the number of hops to 1.1.1.1. Number of hops. I guess we have to know what hops are to be able to answer this as well. Run a command to display this information. So let's talk about the command that I would use on my computer, which is actually different than the command prompt we have here, but it's exactly the same, identical commands, except in the way that they are spelled. And I think most of us got this one. The best way to approach this one is by using the traceroute command. Traceroute is what we would use. Now, this is the Linux/Mac OS flavor of traceroute that you see on the screen here, because that just happened to be what I have in front of me. And you can see that I'm doing a traceroute and not even using any particular parameters in this one. It's traceroute 1.1.1.1. In Windows, it's exactly the same syntax, except the name of the command is different. It's traceRT in Windows, because they kept it to 8 characters or less based on the old school Windows requirements or limitations, where file names could only be 8 characters long with a 3-character extension. So they never expanded out the word traceroute, even though they expanded the capability in the operating system. I guess we could create an alias if we wanted to for traceroute, if we really want to type that in Windows. But in Windows, you can run exactly the same command with traceRT. Now, from my network, where I happen to be, you can see that the number of hops, these are the number of routers between one network and another. And you can see all of those routers, and it ends with 1.1.1.1, which it's kind of amusing that the host name, or the fully qualified domain name or host name of this particular 1.1.1.1 resolves literally to the name 1.1.1.1. Well done, Cloudflare. Well done. That was impressive. So 1.1.1.1. I should just name all of my hosts with the name of the IP address spelled out as the host name. Now I've got a great idea for changing everything in my studio to different names. If I was to count, each one of these is a hop. Each one of these is a router. When you pass through a router in the world of networking, we refer to that as a hop. We are hopping through the router as we go through there. So in this connection from where I happen to be, my traceroute of 1.1.1.1 has 8 hops. The answer is 8. So the number of hops to 1.1.1.1 is 8. Now, I used traceroute for this, but a number of you gave different options. Some of you were nice enough to not just display the Windows version of this, which is traceRT, but you also put the Linux version, which I show on the screen here, or the Mac OS version, which is traceroute. Some of you mentioned, could you use ping for this? Well, let's try it. I bet I can bring up a ping command here real quick. Let's pop open a display terminal that I have on my screen. Here we go. And let's ping 1.1.1.1. There we go. Now we're pinging it. Look, I'm pinging 1.1.1. Okay, so how many hops? I'm going to have to stop the ping because it just will keep going until I stop doing this. All right, well, how many hops was that? We really don't know. We could guess based on the time to live, but we would have to also know what the time to live started as. And then, of course, we would have to know, is it going through different route each time? This does not give us the best way to understand how many hops might be between our computer and 1.1.1.1. So I would argue perhaps ping would not be the one that we would choose for that particular option. That would not be our best choice. But I mentioned there were multiple options you could choose in here. And indeed there are. A path ping would be another one that could show you identical information. Path ping, in fact, I'm not sure path ping is even in the exam objectives for the Network Plus. It is in the A+, but maybe somebody who has, well, wait, I have exam objectives. Of course I do. Let's look real quick. And I have them. Let's do the 008 since we are talking about 008. I have the exam objectives right here. We have all of the commands that you have to use. You can see I've been writing in this one. There's port numbers. There's all kinds of different options that we have to know. This is all of the things you have to know for the exam. So we have to know this. Now, in the last section is the troubleshooting section, where it has all the software tools, and we can see there's ping, IP configs, NS lookup, trace route, ARP, netstat, hostname, route, telnet, TCP dump, nmap, and that's it. So from the perspective of Network Plus, that trace route is really your best choice. That's the one we need to know. But there are other commands out there that can show you similar things. Some folks even mentioned the route command. The route command, in fact, there might be a flavor of the route command that will run a trace route. I don't believe that's a very common option. The route command primarily shows you the routing table of your local machine, which does not tell you how many hops away a particular site is. So I would not use the route command or rely on that to be able to run a trace route. Trace route's the better option here. I think that's the short. The long and the short of it is the trace route command to be able to do that, because all we did was reference what we had in our exam objectives, and I think that's the best place to go for that one. So if you answered trace route, you got that one absolutely right. That is the answer we were looking for. That is the one you would put into your command prompt with a 1.1.1.1 to be able to tell you how many hops away this is. And maybe in the last part of this, we will talk about how I use traceroute quite a bit over this month to troubleshoot a problem with my ISP's network. Many of you know that we had to reschedule this live stream not just once, but twice. The second time was not a network issue, but the first time absolutely was. And I'll talk about what we found and how challenging it was to get that particular problem solved. Challenging enough that it lasted for days and it affected our scheduling for this live stream. So somebody remind me to talk about that at the beginning of the second hour, and I will tell you all about those different parts of this. So now let's shift away from performance-based questions, and let's instead go back to our multiple choice questions. These are the ones you would probably run into if you're working through this. This multiple choice question right here asks, a technician is updating the list of authorized email servers in DNS. Which of the following DNS records or record, which of the following DNS records would be modified? I think we have some challenges there with my grammar, but I think you understand what I'm trying to ask. A technician is updating the list of authorized email servers in DNS. Which of the following DNS records would be modified? Would it be, let me move my head down so you can see the full question answers. Would that be TXT, MX, CNAME, Quad A, or PTR? Those are the DNS records we need to know. Technician is updating the list of authorized email servers in DNS. Which of the following DNS records would be modified? Is it TXT, MX, CNAME, Quad A, PTR? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. You want to choose the link right here at the bottom. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See what you think the answer is to this one. A lot of you jumped in that one fast. I'm wondering if whenever that happens, whenever the number goes up so quick that I look up and suddenly we're almost at the max, I realize, well, maybe is it a gimme? Did we all maybe just choose one we thought it was for sure? I never know. I could peek, I could look at how it's going so far, but I think that takes away from it. I don't want to know. I want to see with you how many people answered which question and how much, just so we can break this down. It should be pretty good to work through these. Some folks in the chat room saying, if you're in Mac OS and Windows, these are different commands, and Linux, they are. But pretty much everything in Linux is the same command in Mac OS. It's obviously a different operating system, but the commands are almost exactly the same. So you could spin up a Linux VM for free and run that at the command prompt and run the traceroute command and all of those ping commands and netstats, and it will work exactly the same as Mac OS. So I don't think you'd have much of a problem there. Let's see how you did with this DNS question, though. DNS is a good skill to know. It's an important skill to know. This DNS question asks, a technician is updating the list of authorized email servers in DNS. Which of the following DNS records would be modified? Would it be TXT, MX, CNAME, Quad A, or PTR? What do you think? Let's find out what you think. We'll stop the poll. 60% of you, 60, say the answer is MX is what we would update. 19% said TXT, 9% said CNAME, 6% said Quad A, and 4% said PTR. You'll notice in this question that I said, I want to know the list of authorized email servers in DNS. And an authorized email server is different than just the email server that we would use. There's a reason that we would authorize a server. And that's because we want to be able to make sure that if someone receives an email that says it came from us, we want to verify that it was sent from an authorized email server. So how would you tell everyone what email servers are authorized? Well, I can tell you it's not the MX record. 60% of us said MX. I did throw that one in because it has something to do with mail. That's the mail exchange record. That is the record that designates where your email server happens to be on your network. But it doesn't have anything to do with the authorization of that mail. It just talks about where to send mail, where to put it when email is incoming. But it doesn't talk about whether that's authorized or not, which is the important part of this. So the record that we were looking for is a different record. It's the one that 19% of you chose, which is the text record. Now, wait a second. A text record, that's just text. Why would that have anything to do with authorizing an email server? Well, that's because in that text record, where you can put many different things, there is one type of text record where you will specify what email servers are authorized to send mail on your behalf. And we refer to that as a sender policy framework. Notice, SPF is what we would put there. The SPF in a text record. This is what other people, when they receive an email from you, they will perform, these mail servers will perform a DNS lookup to your DNS server and effectively ask your DNS server, I just got an email from you. What email servers are authorized to send that? And I have a list of those. If you look at my DNS server, you'll see a couple of different email servers that are authorized. And if one of those email servers matches the email server that sent that email, then we know it was legitimate or is at least authorized from that perspective. SPF, the Sender Policy Framework. This is in the N10-008 exam. The objective number is 1.6 and the name of the video is DNS record types. There's other types of different records we would put in there as well. One of them is a DKIM, a domain keys identified mail. These are records that we would put into our system that would digitally sign all of the emails that are going out, and then we put our public key in our DNS. We literally stick our public key in our DNS server so that other people, when they receive it, can pull our public key, they can verify the signature, and they know it must have been sent by one of our devices. So yet another way to help with the anti-spamming process, and it's all part of a text record in DNS. So if you answered text, the 19% of you that said TXT, that was the answer that we were looking for. MX does not authorize anything. All it does is tell incoming mail where to go. Oh, you're an incoming mail? Go to that server right there. Go to that mail exchanger right there. That's all that the MX does for you. But it doesn't provide any type of authorization or notification to anyone else that the mail that they've received is indeed authorized and that it was sent from an authorized server. If you want to see what these look like in the DNS, I have a picture of them. Here's a DNS. This is a text record. It's written in text. Not too unfamiliar there, right? And you can see this is a text record, and it has this SPF1 include mailgun.org. Mailgun is the email service that I use to send mail out to you. And this is also the DKIM record. So there's the public key that is used to verify the digital signatures that are being sent from my mail server. Now, of course, all of this happens behind the scenes. You never see it. You never see the confirmation of the SPF server. You never see the digital signature or the verification of the digital signature. But if you look in the header of an email message, you will see if SPF validated. You will see if DKIM validated, and it will tell you SPF check. It's good. It's successful. It validated. DKIM, it validated, or it will tell you that one of those did not. So another useful thing, if you ever go into your email and you view all of the headers that are normally hidden, you never see them. But if you go out and view all of the headers there in Google, I think it's view source or view original, and view all of the headers, you'll see in there's a reference to SPF, there's a reference to DKIM, and that's what they're talking about are those verifications in the text record. Useful. Those can be very useful if you're trying to troubleshoot, find out if the mail that you're getting is legitimate, all of that. So hopefully that can give you a perspective. So let's see if we can bounce back now and do another question. This next question on our list asks, a network administrator has enabled LACP on their core switches. Which of the following would be most associated with this change? Would it be jumbo frames, port bonding, trunking, Ethernet flow control, or port security? Got a few options here. A network administrator has enabled LACP on their core switches. Which of the following would be most associated with this change? Is it jumbo frames, port bonding, trunking, Ethernet flow control, or port security? If you think you know the answer, please answer at the link you see on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. All of these are things we need to know about. Jumbo frames, port bonding, trunking, Ethernet flow control, and port security. They are all topics from your exam objectives. So now we need to go through and make sure that we understand. Again, this is sort of the reverse of what we saw before, where we have a bunch of acronyms as our answers. This time we have the acronym in the question, and then we have to decipher how we would use that. And again, we're not even talking about the abbreviation itself. So this is the real key, is understanding what these differences are. See if you happen to know when you would apply. You may even know what LACP stands for. So, but even then, it doesn't necessarily point back to any of these answers. So this becomes a little bit more of a challenge. Now, if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answer, see if you happen to know what this one is. This should be pretty good if you're in a situation where you're trying to determine what the best answer would be for a question. It might be useful not only to know the abbreviation, but know when you would use this particular abbreviation. I think this is a good example of that. I think this is a very good example of that. So the question again asks, a network administrator has enabled LACP on their core switches. Which of the following would be most associated with this change? Is it jumbo frames, port bonding, trunking, Ethernet flow control, or port security? What did you choose? Let's find out. 50.62%. I'll take that. As a majority of you say the answer is port bonding, but 24% of you say the answer is trunking, and then 11% say port security. From there, we go down to single digits, 7% for Ethernet flow control and 6% for jumbo frames. So more than at least half of you, 50% of you, just over, say the answer is port bonding is the answer that we were looking for, port bonding. But is it really? Now we get into those questions about what would this be used for? The LACP is a link aggregation control protocol. And I guess those first two letters are the important ones, link aggregation, and being able to work through them. Link aggregation is lag. That is the abbreviation or how we describe link aggregation. Sometimes you'll see this referred to as port bonding as the name of this. But some people will say, oh, did you set up a lag between those switches? You're thinking, is it a bolt? What is it, a lag? Is it somebody sleeping? Are we slow? Is it lag? Nope. It's link aggregation. That's what we're referring to. And that's when we would connect multiple connections between switches. Let's say these are two switches and these are gigabit connections. Now, normally you would never do this on a switch. The instant you put more than one connection between switches, you've created a loop. In fact, if this was a normal switch config, this network would be down. This network would be broken right now. So there would be a loop here and no one would be able to do anything because the switch would be completely overwhelmed and not working. But if you define each of these interfaces on both switches as being part of a link aggregation set, they say ports 1, 2, 3, and 4 are part of my lag, then it will not loop. It will interpret or consider all 4 of those interfaces as one big logical interface. So you've now effectively created a 4 gigabit link between all of these. Now, sometimes people will refer to this as, did you set up LACP? What they really mean to say is, did you set up a lag? Did you set up link aggregation? Did you set up port bonding? But we often refer to that also as LACP, I think, because many times we're turning on this LACP protocol so that these 2 switches can effectively set up the link aggregation and keep track of it on their own. That's what LACP does. The link aggregation control protocol adds the ability to manage that connection. It's sort of like the auto config for link aggregation is the LACP. What's nice about that also is that if you lose one of those connections, you unplug one, LACP will automatically figure out that you just unplugged one. And it will effectively keep everything running and shrink it down to 3 interfaces instead of 4. And then when you plug the 4th one back in again, it recognizes, oh, we have another interface available, and it starts working again. LACP is not required for link aggregation, and often people will not run LACP on an aggregated link. Sometimes they really like doing that, though. So you have the option. You can either manage it manually, just like you would manually configure IP addresses and you would manually configure speeds and duplex. You can do the same thing with port bonding or with link aggregation if you're not running LACP. So LACP, a very useful protocol, something you can certainly use if you're planning to do anything relating to port bonding. And 50% of you did choose port bonding. That's exactly the right answer. That's the one we were looking for. 24% of you said trunking. Trunking, of course, very important between connections, but you don't have to have any type of link aggregation to be able to trunk between individual switches. You could have one single link between switches and you can trunk across that single link. That's the benefit of trunking, of course, is we don't have to put multiple individual connections between switches. We can put one connection and effectively trunk thousands of VLANs over that one single connection. Probably not scaling very well when you do that, by the way. But on my network, I have about 3 or 4 VLANs on my network, and I have a single trunk link between my switches, and I can send any of those VLANs across any of those switches, and it figures out, it leaves VLAN 2 on one side, it ends up on VLAN 2 on the other side, thanks to the trunking. But I don't need LACP to be able to perform trunking, so that would not be the right answer. Port security is useful if you want to be sure that nobody's unplugging any devices and plugging their own laptops into the network. Port security, very useful for that. It's really based on the MAC addresses that it sees on the network, but has nothing to do with link aggregation or the LACP protocol. We also have Ethernet flow control. An important part of Ethernet is making sure that it can ask for traffic to slow down and speed up again. All happens behind the scenes. We never see it, but you can see it in a protocol decode. And flow control, very useful, but has nothing to do with link aggregation or the LACP protocol. And then jumbo frames, very useful, especially if you're transferring very large files. You want to do that as efficiently as possible. Then you want to enable jumbo frames on your network, but jumbo frames don't require anything relating to link aggregation to be able to work. In this case, LACP is associated with port bonding and link aggregation. 50% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Well, you've probably seen already, there is a lot of information on the exam. The N10-008 and the N10-009 all have a lot of information you need to know about cabling and networks and protocols and command lines. And we've already seen just a few of those already. There are 93 videos in my N10-008 video series, and it will probably be close to that when we finish up on the 009. So there's a lot of content that you would need to go through. Wouldn't it be great if everything was consolidated into one single document for you? Well, I've already created this. This happens to be in my 009 course notes, but it's very similar to the ones you'd get with the 008. So all of the text from all of the videos, it's in here. All of the important charts that are in all of those videos, it's in here. All of the important graphics and displays that I've created, in fact, some of the animations I've created and put into a single view in here, also in here. So if you're looking for a comprehensive, and I don't use that term lightly, everything that's in those videos that's important is in this document. And that is why we've created these course notes, to give you an easy way to have access to these. So whether you're taking the 008 exam or the 009 exam, we have a set of course notes for you. There they are. There's the 008 and the 009. Both of these, you of course want to pick the one that matches the version of the exam that you're planning to take. You don't need both. You just need one of them. Figure out which exam you're taking. And of course, all of your study materials should be matched to that exam because there are differences between them. So make sure you're aware of those. They're on our site, and it's something that might help you with your studies. You can learn more about it by going to professormesser.com/NPCN, or simply choose the options available at the top of the screen to be able to choose our course notes for Network Plus. Let's do another question. Here's a question. This is a real statistic taken from a real firewall. This question asks, a firewall manufacturer estimates their hardware will fail every 29 years. That's a real number from a real firewall manufacturer right now. Which of the following would describe this estimate? Would it be AUP, VRRP, MTBF, EULA, or RTO? Again, with the acronyms. A firewall manufacturer estimates their hardware will fail every 29 years. Which of the following would describe this estimate? Is that an AUP, a VRRP, an MTBF, an EULA, AULA, and RTO? You got a few options available there. Let's see if you happen to know what these answers mean. Every single one of these is a real acronym that comes directly from the exam objectives. So again, if you don't recognize one of them, make sure you go back and write that down so that you can study later and figure out, oh, what was AUP, VRP, MTBF, EULA, RTO? You need to know those. It's important that you know those. So make sure you step through all of that. If you think you know the answer, lock it in. You can see the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. I don't know if I've mentioned that link today at all, but there it is. A million times, but there it is. And you can lock in your answer and see if you're going to get this one right. We did really well in that last one. I think we're going to do really well on this one too. I have a good feeling about it. I think we're going to come through on this one. Lock that question. I want to give you everybody a chance to get that in. This is also one that becomes difficult to Google all of these different abbreviations. So no Googling out there. You want to pretend that you're in the exam room. You don't have Google available in the exam room. You don't have your phone available in the exam room. It even becomes hard to breathe at that point. But you will make it through, I promise. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, a firewall manufacturer estimates their hardware will fail every 29 years. Which of the following would describe this estimate? Is that an AUP, a VRRP, an MTBF, a EULA, or an RTO? Let's now stop the poll and see what you answered. 82% of you say the answer is MTBF. We have a tie for second, 7% each with EULA and RTO. And then we have 2% that said a VRRP and a 1% that said an AUP. Is this another one where we all sort of zigged and we should have zagged? Well, we know RTO is on this list. RTO stands for a recovery time objective. It's a time. It's a time that it takes to do something. So it doesn't describe how often something fails. It describes how quickly you can get back up and running. RTO. So that's not the term we were hoping to find. RPO was not even in that list of things, but something that was in that list is the mean time to repair, which is the time required to fix a problem. When somebody shows up and said, our firewall just failed, how long is it going to take to fix this? Oh, we'll be up in an hour. Okay, that's our mean time to repair. That's how long it usually works for that. But if somebody wants to say, we want to plan for the firewall to fail. We think this hardware will only be good for a certain amount of time. How long do you think it will be before the hardware just gives out? Well, we can go to the hardware manufacturer. The hardware manufacturer will tell you that value. They will tell you that number. And in this particular case, I chose a firewall that had no moving parts inside of it. There were no fans. There were no spinning hard drives. Everything was solid state in this particular firewall. And because of that, it had a relatively long mean time between failures. This is how long we would expect on average. We can argue about whether mean means average or not, but on average, how long would we expect this particular firewall to be able to operate before it failed? This gives us a chance to decide maybe we should buy another one just to keep in the closet. Because if we think this is going to fail in a year, we might want to have an extra one that we can pull out and put in the network and be up and running. But this particular manufacturer of a firewall said our mean time between failures is 29 years because there's no moving parts inside of this firewall. As long as it's not hit by lightning, it doesn't have any type of power issue, we think the components in here are good enough to keep you up and running for 29 years on average, which is the number we're looking for, and that is the mean time between failures. We know that it's not RTO because we just talked about the recovery time objective. It's also not an end user license agreement. You know those big long things that you scroll through and hit submit when you're installing software without reading? That's a EULA. So we're not talking about the end user license agreement, which is effectively a contract that you are digitally signing between you and the manufacturer of that software. And in this case, that wasn't the question. This had nothing to do with agreeing to the terms and conditions of an end user license agreement. Speaking of terms and conditions, we have an acceptable use policy. If you work for a company and when you started, you had to sign probably something that says, I agree with everything in the employee handbook. And I would bet in that employee handbook is an acceptable use policy that describes how you are able to use the technology this company has given you. So if they give you a laptop, here's what you can do with this laptop. And perhaps more importantly, here are things you cannot do on this laptop. I don't know why we have to say that, but it becomes, was I not supposed to do that? No, you were not. You were not supposed to do that because it's listed in our acceptable use policy. VRRP, a redundancy protocol for not just virtual routers, but real routers. You can have a VRRP for a routing redundancy protocol. This is also useful if you have multiple routers and you want to be able to have one on standby and have another one kick in if we happen to lose that original router. It's a great way to have redundancy in our routing protocols. But VRRP has nothing to do with a piece of firewall failing in 29 years. So that is a great protocol, but not useful for this question. In this case, it's a mean time between failures. That's what we were hoping to find. That is the answer we'd use. And hopefully you have one of those firewalls and you don't have to worry about it going anywhere for 29 years. That, by the way, is a Palo Alto Networks firewall that I pulled that from directly from the Palo Alto Networks firewall site. Full disclosure, I was previously a Palo Alto Networks firewall systems engineer, so it was just the natural place I go to when I want to find firewall information, since it is really the best firewall you can buy. Let's do another question. I've got another one for you. Here we go. This one asks, a company is installing privacy filters on all of their laptops. Which of the following is this designed to protect against? Would it be phishing, tailgating, on-path attacks, shoulder surfing, or spoofing? A company is installing privacy filters on all of their laptops. Which of the following is this designed to protect against? Phishing, tailgating, on-path attack, shoulder surfing, or spoofing? If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer right here on this link. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Tell me what you think the right answer is. A lot of people answering this one fast. Boom. Numbers went way up. right away. It's another one that we either got great, we did fantastic on this one, or we all got it wrong. I think it's one of those. We're going to find out in a moment. Is it a gimme? It sort of could be. If you've run across this, you've probably seen this particular situation before. But if you've not run across this would be an important one to know for this exam, because you certainly need to know these topics. Make sure you're familiar with them. If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link on your screen. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what it is. It's got to be one of these, right? It's got to be one. All of these are important things to know. They are all in the exam objectives. You should know what all of them are, especially if you're working through this. A company is installing privacy filters on all of their laptops. Which of the following is this designed to protect against? Is it phishing, tailgating, on-path attack, shoulder surfing, or spoofing? What did you choose? Can't wait to see. 79% of you say the answer is shoulder surfing. 9% say the answer is phishing. 5% say spoofing. 3% for on-path attack and 2% for tailgating. I was really hoping tailgating would be much higher, but none of you even changed a bit off of this. The next highest, 79% of you, practically 80% said shoulder surfing, and then down to 9% for phishing. Well, in this case, it's shoulder surfing. That's exactly what it is. That's what we were looking for. This is when people can look at your phone. Always worry about this when I'm unlocking my phone, that somebody's watching me unlock the phone. I try not to use a lot of people don't like to use the facial recognition for their phone. They prefer putting a number in, or as I found with my phone lately, it doesn't recognize me. Who are you? It says. I don't recognize the face. I don't know what that's about. But this is one where if you're in a hospital, if you're walking through a coffee shop, if you're on a plane, if you're on a train, there's someone right in front of you with their computer. Someone right next to you with their computer, and you can watch exactly what they're doing. Oh, sending an email. Yeah, okay. Oh, there's your quarterly numbers. Okay, got it. All right. Oh, there's your profit margin. I see that. Yep. Oh, there's your biggest competitor listed on the screen. You could read everything because you're sitting right there. It was brilliant to be able to have that right up. I could read everything. And it's just a matter of looking at the screen. Sometimes they don't even know you're doing it. You could, if you're in a big city, there's a building 20 feet away. You can see someone's screen from another building. Maybe get binoculars. You could see it even better. But it's very easy to be able to see those things. One way that you can prevent these looky-loos, these eavesdroppers, one of the ways that you can prevent it is to simply use a filter. Now you may be thinking to yourself, what do you mean on a filter on my laptop on a plane? The person next to me is going to be able to see it. Oh no. En contraire, mon frere. The thing that is interesting about these filters is that they have a very narrow view of how to view that screen. You have to be directly 100% in front of the screen to be able to see it. And I've been on a plane where the person next to me in coach, we're all in coach. You can tell we're in coach because this is how I'm sitting. So we're in coach. You know, I'm surfing through my phone because that's all I can do is move my thumbs because I'm in coach. And the person next to me is on their laptop and it's a black screen. It's literally a black screen. And I'm thinking, what are they okay? Do they know what they're doing? They realize they haven't turned their computer on because their screen is black. But then I realized, no, there's a privacy filter there. To them, everything looks great. But to you, even sitting next to someone that close, you are shoulder to shoulder with that person, you can't see their screen. It is completely black. They work so well. And in this case, that's exactly what we would be stopping is shoulder surfing. Someone sitting there and watching your screen. The only way someone would be able to see that with a privacy filter is to really go right, and you'd have to push them aside. Let me move you out of the way and get right in front of your computer to be able to see what's there. That's the only way you would be able to do it. I think they would notice that. In this case, it would not be phishing. Phishing, of course, is someone who's sending information to incite you to give up some private details, a password, personal information, anything relating to that. Phishing is not something that you have to worry about or that a privacy filter would protect against. Doesn't help with phishing because the person can still see their laptop even with the privacy filter there. All the phishing attempts will still get to my eyeballs. So a privacy filter won't help that. We also have spoofing. Spoofing is when you would have, you would take the form of something that is not you. You would pretend to be someone else or something else on the network. That is spoofing. Privacy filters don't stop spoofing. I can change my IP address to an IP address that was on the network earlier to pretend that I was that person, but a privacy filter won't block that. We also have tailgating. That's when somebody walks through an open door. Somebody unlocks the door and then you walk in right behind them. You're tailgating right behind them when you go through that. Tailgating specifies that you're walking through and they didn't realize that you used them to get in through this door, which is a little different than piggybacking. Piggybacking is they let you in. You can think of this. If somebody is piggybacking, you have somebody. Piggyback is when you're riding on someone's shoulders. You're riding on somebody's back. When you're piggybacking, they know you're there. The person carrying you knows that you're there. Trust me. So this tailgating, they had no idea. But a privacy filter doesn't stop someone from walking through a door. So that's not going to help you. And of course, an on-path attack is when you would have someone in the middle of a conversation that can either view and or modify the communication between two devices, and those other two devices have no idea that you're there. We used to call that a man-in-the-middle attack. And then we realized, well, anybody can really do this. A man or woman in the middle attack. No, that doesn't sound good either. It's on-path. It's an on-path attack. So much easier to say it that way. An on-path attack. And a privacy filter does not stop an on-path attack. The answer here is indeed shoulder surfing. That is the right answer. That's the one we were looking for. And that is the correct one that you should have selected. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn that CEU is to follow these directions. You must follow these instructions to earn the CEU. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website and click the Contact Us link. Contact Us link will bring up a form. In that form, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put August 2024 Network Plus. And then in the body of the message on a line by itself, please put the super secret code words of the month, shoulder surfing tailgating. Shoulder surfing tailgating are the super secret code words of the month. Put that into the message. That's all you have to put. You can hit submit. It will go to me. And then about a week later, you'll get an email from me that says that you must have been here for an hour. This email certifies that you were here, etc., etc. So that is the super secret code words in the process. If you want to put other things into that message, you're more than welcome to as well. I read through every single one of these. But all you have to do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click on Contact Us, put in your name, your email address in the subject line, put August 2024 Network Plus, and in the body of the message, put the super secret code words, shoulder surfing tailgating. And if you do that, I'll send you an email. It's just that easy. Now, I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's do one more question because I'm just in the mood for it. So we'll do one more on here. This next question asks, users on a switch are experiencing performance issues due to excessive multicasts. Which of the following might help with this issue? Would it be asymmetric routing, IGMP snooping, spanning tree protocol, captive portal, or SSID broadcasts? Users on a switch are experiencing performance issues due to excessive multicasts. Which of the following might help with this issue? Would it be asymmetric routing, IGMP snooping, spanning tree protocol, captive portal, or SSID broadcasts? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You instead want to go to the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. We'll have to see what you think the answer might be. All of these things are things you need to know about, by the way. So make sure that if you don't recognize any of these answers, that you make a note of it and go back and have a look at those in your exam objectives, in your book, in the videos. figure out the details. Maybe this would be something you can work through. There's got to be one of these, right? We have to be able to choose one and be able to work through them. I have to see if you know what this one happens to be. And this is one I recently ran into on my own network. I had a problem with performance issues due to excessive multicasts, or I potentially did. And then I fixed it. Well, how did I fix it? It's got to be one of these 5 things is how I fixed it. Let's see how you would have fixed it. Let's go through this question again. It asks, users on a switch are experiencing performance issues due to excessive multicasts. This is difficult to say. Which of the following might help with this issue? Is it asymmetric routing, IGMP snooping, spanning tree protocol, captive portal, or SSID broadcasts? What did you choose? Let's find out. We will stop the poll and see what you locked in. Oh, we're all over the place. We are all over the place. 40% say spanning tree protocol would fix this. 27% say IGMP snooping would fix this. 21% say asymmetric routing would fix this. And then 8% SSID broadcast, and only 1% say captive portal. This is the top 3 are just very strong at 40%, 27%, and 21%. Pretty big when you're working through all of these. So hopefully you're familiar with this one. If you're ever working with multicasts, you will most likely have some type of association or become very familiar very quickly with a protocol known as the Internet Group Management Protocol, or IGMP. IGMP is an extremely useful protocol, especially on networks that use a lot of multicast. Now, not all networks have a lot of multicast. You may not have any multicast on your network or relatively little on your network, but there's certain applications that love multicast. And probably the most prevalent of these applications are things like surveillance cameras, IP cameras, where they are sending that video signal back to a recording device, a network video recorder, an NVR. And all of that communication that is going back and forth, really mostly between the camera and the NVR, is often sent as multicast, which means that every device on the network effectively gets to see the multicasts and has to interpret the multicast. And when you have a lot of cameras, everybody has to stop what they're doing every time a multicast comes in to see if this multicast is for them. One of the ways that you can limit the scope of that multicast is to have the switch look for these, but only forward the multicasts, only switch those multicasts to the devices that need to see them. And we do that through a feature known as IGMP snooping. This is what it looks like on one of the switches that I have. I have a newer switch. It looks a little bit different, but the features are pretty much the same, where you could turn on IGMP snooping and then say, this is the VLAN I want to choose for snooping, so that you can send the video signal to the NVR, but have other devices on the same VLAN that are still operating, and then you don't have a problem with that. This is very useful. If you find out more about this on the N10-008 video, section 5.5, common network issues, and being able to use that IGMP snooping. In fact, if you're doing anything with multicast and you have not turned this on, you may find that your performance on other devices suddenly gets much better when you enable IGMP snooping. It's a very low problem. There's not much of a problem with turning on this feature. You don't have to worry so much about it. Obviously, don't turn on things you don't know about on your switch. This is when you can't get into much trouble. And in fact, if you find that you turn it on and something doesn't quite work the way you were expecting, you just turn it off again. This has very little impact. There's not much engineering you have to do. There's not much worrying or other configurations you have to set up. You just turn it on and you're done. So each VLAN you could turn on a VLAN by VLAN basis, but that is the one for IGMP snooping. That's what we were hoping for. 27% of you chose that one. That is the feature that would give you better performance. Spanning tree protocol, of course, is the protocol that prevents your network from looping. If you were to plug in a connection from one switch to another, and then you were to plug in another connection from the same switch to the other, you would create a loop. One way that you can prevent your network from going down when you do that, and you will eventually do that, by the way. One way that you can prevent your network from failing and stopping and crashing and nobody would be able to do anything is to enable STP, the spanning tree protocol. But spanning tree protocol does not help you with multicast. It will not correct any performance problems relating to multicast. Neither will asymmetric routing. Asymmetric routing is when you send traffic in one direction and then on the way back, it goes out a different set of routers, which is not common, but it's more common than you might think. A lot of companies do that for redundancy purposes so that the traffic can go in and out in many different ways. And if you lose one of those routers, it can use the secondary path automatically using a number of different ways. Generally, it's a routing protocol that allows us to do that. Asymmetric routing, though, can create problems for other devices, such as firewalls, that expect to see both sides of the conversation so that it can perform its firewalling, so that it sees the entire flow of traffic. So imagine a firewall that sees the traffic coming in, and then a different firewall sees the traffic going out, and it says, well, wait, that traffic going out never came in. I'm blocking it. I'm a stateful firewall. There's no state for that. I'm throwing it out. But wait, that was legitimate traffic. It just happened to come in asymmetrically. So whenever you're designing an asymmetric network, especially with your routers and your firewalls, you have to design them in a way that all of those firewalls and all of those routers understand that that asymmetric route exists. There's a number of different ways to engineer that, but just one of those things that's important to know about. SSID broadcasts are used by wireless networks to send out the name of the network to the devices. The thing that populates that pull-down list are the SSID broadcasts. Has nothing to do with multicast or performance issues. And a captive portal, you've probably seen these when you've connected to a wireless network at a hotel or at a coffee shop. It pops up a screen that says, welcome to the coffee shop. By clicking here, you agree that you'll be good on the network. Yes, I agree. Or you put in your email address or whatever it happens to be, and you gain access to the network. That is a captive portal. Has nothing to do with multicast, has nothing to do with performance issues. In this case, the only answer, the one that makes the most sense, the one that we were working through, is the one that we have on our screen here, the IGMP snooping that 27% of you chose. That is the right answer. That's the one that we were hoping to see, and that's the one that will fix your multicast issues, or at least all the big multicast issues, a lot of the multicast issues. There's a lot more to multicast and managing multicast that you will probably need to know about. So that's a good example, by the way, of how it's more than one thing. It's always more than one thing, but this is a good way to start it, is by turning on IGMP snooping. There is a lot more in the exam, of course. We only went through a number of questions today, but of course, there are hundreds of topics you need to know about. Fortunately, CompTIA has documented all of these for you, and it's an absolutely free document to download to be able to see these. It's the exam objectives. Go to professormesser.com/objectives, and I have a link that goes over to the CompTIA website. There's also a way to do this from your favorite search engine. Simply look for CompTIA exam objectives. We can do that as well. It's a great way to get a free document that tells you everything you need to know. Now, of course, you now need to learn it. That's a different problem. But at least now we know exactly what's expected of us when we walk into the exam room, which, by the way, is a lot more than what you get from Microsoft or Cisco or Amazon or Red Hat or anyone else, quite honestly. That is the situation that we are in, working through all of those pieces. So hopefully that's given you some perspective on important things that you need to know with the objectives. Make sure you grab those. I like that they're free. So that's another good thing to think about, is free documents can help you as you're watching the free videos and learning everything you need to know for your Network Plus exam. We do one of these Network Plus study groups every month. Make sure you check back in next month in September. Next month is like 2 days away. So we're already in September. We have A+ study groups on the 10th and the 12th. We have a Security Plus study group on the 25th. Our next Network Plus study group is currently scheduled for September 18th. Now, for those of you that were looking at the calendar for this month, the reason I say currently scheduled is that the one that we're doing today was not originally scheduled for this day. In fact, this has been rescheduled twice. So first, thank you for your flexibility and your patience with all of this. But these dates can change. Unfortunately, there's always a place you can go to find out where the next live event is going to be. It's at professormesser.com/calendar. I keep that always up to date, minute to minute. So the moment I know something has changed, I go into the calendar and I change it immediately so that you know immediately that something has changed. I also will usually put a note over on our Discord, and I change the events channel in our Discord. We have a whole channel in Discord that's nothing but when the next events are going to be, just so you can find it very easily. So both the calendar and the events channel are updated at the same time. So it's a great way to find out when the next event is going to be. You could be watching this well after September 18th. Just go to the calendar. You can join us on the next live event. You'll be able to find out exactly when that will be. Well, the first hour's over, but we're not done yet. Stick around for the after show where you're going to ask me questions. In fact, you can submit them right now by going to professormesser.com/QA and submitting that question with the tab that's at the top of your screen. Of course, we have our Network Plus Success Bundle and other study materials on our website, along with our absolutely free course. You can go to professormesser.com/netsuccess. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers. Why would you pay full price for a voucher? If you're in the U.S., Canada, or U.S. territory, you can get discounted vouchers by simply visiting professormesser.com/vouchers. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need anything special. You've got now the vouchers available. You can just save money. And I've got other links there. If you happen to be a student, there are also links on that /vouchers link that will take you to an academic store where you get even more discounts if you happen to be a student. Find out all about that at professormesser.com/vouchers. And if you're on social media, and who isn't? I guess a lot of people are not. But if you are, find us on social media by typing in professormesser.com/ the name of the place you'd like to find us, /Discord, /YouTube, /Twitter, /Instagram, /LinkedIn, or just put one in there and see if we're there. That'd be a good way to do it. You've got different options available, but that's another great way to find us. If you liked this video, we would love it if you would give it a thumbs up. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, we'd like it even more. So feel free to plug that in as well by visiting professormesser.com/YouTube. Stick around for the after show. We got a lot more to come. Just a moment, I'll answer your questions and we'll talk in the chat room, and there's other stories to discuss. We'll see you on the other side of this. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Okay, I'm going to take a sip. What was the story I was going to tell? There was a story I was going to tell in the after show. And now it's time to tell the story. Somebody in the chat room needs to remind me what the story was that I was going to tell, because now, of course, I can't remember. There's a lot that happens here behind the scenes, so I can't always remember. Now, all the ISP issue, thank you so much. We'll talk about that in a moment. While I am talking about that, you can, we've been using this link all day. This is the same link that you can use to submit your questions to me. This is a set of Q&A questions that are available. What I need to do is turn off that poll that we have here so that you can see it. There we go. And on your screen now, it will say something like this. As soon as I can plug it in, there we go. You can submit questions for the second hour of the study group at any time. We will be moderating these questions during the session, we being me. So your contribution may not appear immediately. It won't appear immediately, but I have the big list behind the scenes, and I'll be looking through the list, and we'll pull some out and we'll answer those questions. I have a hard stop at the top of the hour, so we will get through all of those. So one of the challenges I had over this last number of weeks is my ISP had this problem where every 7 seconds or so, every 40 seconds, and I need to find the picture. I have a picture of this. Every 40 seconds, I would lose connectivity to the network for 7 seconds, and then it would come back. Very frustrating. If you want to visually see what this looks like, this is what it looked like. So this was while something else was going on. I have a much better view of this that shows that 40-second gap of time. This is a better shot of this right here. So you can see this is a utility called Ping Plotter. If you've never seen Ping Plotter, it's amazing. It has a trace route that it does at the top of the screen. And then it has a plot that it creates in the bottom of the screen showing a ping that is taking place, and it shows the response time of that ping in the white. And if the ping doesn't go through, it shows red. Now look at this. This is a 10-minute period. So in 10 minutes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 or 15 outages in a 10-minute period. So this only happens for 7 seconds. Really not even, more like 3 or 4 seconds. Every 40 seconds, it goes down for 4 seconds, 3 or 4 seconds. How frustrating is this? So if you're in a game, every 40 seconds, it stops for about 4 seconds and then keeps going again. If you're on a phone call, you lose the phone call every 40 seconds and then it comes back 4 seconds later. If you're on a real-time video call, everything freezes every 40 seconds and then catches back up. You lose everything during that 4-second drop. Very frustrating, very challenging to have this here. And so I started looking at this and I called into my ISP and I said, hello, ISP, something is not quite right, because that's a weird problem. You got to admit, that's a crazy weird problem. And I said, what's going on? Well, the tier 1 folks at your ISP are very good at troubleshooting problems in your house. Problems in that view. So they checked my ONT because I've got fiber to the house. They checked my optical network connection. They checked the modem connecting the ONT itself. They checked the hardware inside that device. They complained that the problem was my router. I said that I was ready for them and said, well, I've bypassed the router and plugged directly into the internet. They're like, oh, darn it. They test the ONT. All they can really say is, we will send someone out and they'll be at your house. We got availability in a couple days. They'll come and check it. Like, hold on. Now, one of the things in the neighborhood where I live, everybody's on a WhatsApp group. And we were all complaining because it's very obvious. And this was happening to all of us. So I had the ping plotter up. I started looking at it. And I started noticing whenever these red lines start, I had the perspective of where I was to be able to see this. And all I could really see is that I lost connectivity to the internet every 40 seconds. But I thought, 40 seconds? Something is happening that's a very common, methodical, automated process that's occurring every 40 seconds. I thought, what could this be that's happening? So what I did was I was simply pinging one of my local routers that's here. These IP addresses that are here, by the way, are very different now. I'll tell you why in just a moment. So I went out to the internet. Just so happens I have a web server that's out on the internet that's not part of my ISP. It's not even in the same state where I live. And I ran the same trace. I ran the trace route. I didn't run a ping command, but I ran a trace route. And what I found is that every 40 seconds at some ISP that was, or really it was a tier 1 network provider that was connected to my ISP. Tier 1 providers are the ones that are the backbone of the internet. Companies like Level 3, for example. These companies you never hear about because they're the ones that your ISP is connecting to connect to the internet. They are effectively the internet. And what I was finding is that every 40 seconds, there would be a routing loop just before hitting my ISP. And I have the trace route. I'll have to find it here. I have a trace route here that shows the problem with that connection. So it goes into a routing loop. Again, one of the important things we need to know for the Security Plus. And that routing loop, I'm looking for the screenshot I have of the routing loop when it was occurring. It was hard to catch it at just the right time. But what it effectively, the trace route that I was doing during that time period effectively said it's going from router.1 to router.2 to router.1 to router.2 to router.1 to router.2. So it's every 40 seconds, it got in this weird router loop where it went, and then another routing update would come through and put it back the way it was for the next 40 seconds. It did that for days, because every time me and my neighbors would call in, they would say, well, everything looks good with your modem. We'll get a guy out there in a couple days. And we couldn't explain. How do you explain to someone who's tier 1 at a cable/ISP company that the problem is with a routing loop that is just off a tier 1 provider? That's nonsense language. It doesn't even sound like normal speak when I say it out loud now. Unless you're in the industry, you don't even understand the repercussions of that or how important it is. But my ISP had no way to escalate this. And all I said was, could we just get a router person at your company aware of this? You don't have to send them a ticket. You don't have to just pick up the phone, call your manager, have them talk to a router person. Then they'll understand what this happened. And it was only happening to my neighborhood because my neighborhood was the only one associated with that particular subnet. How you like that? So imagine for an entire weekend, imagine trying to talk to an ISP and explain to the tier 1 folks the scope of this problem and how it's affecting everyone, and having them have no ability to first even understand how bad it was, and secondly, understand what to do. They knew how to fix. They were really good at testing their modems. They're really good at doing their tier 1 stuff, but they were not enabled enough to know what to do when it's outside the scope of what they can do. Their normal response was, we'll roll a truck. And I told them over the phone, you can roll the truck. The person will be here in 2 days and he'll show up at my house and he still won't be able to fix it because the problem's happening at a data center in Miami. The problem is a logical issue with the routing of the internet. I think what had happened is there was some other provider that had incorrectly set the route for that particular subnet. So of course I sent email messages. I tried to find people in the executives but it's the weekend. None of them are checking their emails. None of them are in the office. We finally on Monday, as this had been going on since I think Friday. So on Monday, finally, people were in the office. We were able to get a hold of somebody, but then it took another series of days for them to finally find a way to work around the problem. They did not fix the router loop. Ultimately, they moved us to a different subnet where the loop was not an issue. And that was the biggest frustration with this whole problem. That's the reason when we originally had this event scheduled for a couple weeks ago, and I told you we've got to reschedule it for the next week. This is why. Because imagine being on a live stream and every 40 seconds you would get, and then it would pick up again. Like that, you couldn't do that. You can't run a live stream that way. It'd be the worst live stream ever. Now, ironically, on that day when we did the live stream, when we had originally scheduled the live stream, I went all the way up until like 10 in the morning. It was not fixed yet. And I said, well, we can't do this today. I think it was a Wednesday. Did it go until Wednesday? It might have. Tuesday or Wednesday. I said, well, we can't do the live stream. And I canceled it because I want to give you time to be able to know, okay, we're not going to do this. So a couple hours before I canceled it. So normally we start this at 12 noon. By 12:30, they had fixed it. That was the irony of the whole process. I am the person in my neighborhood who was designated as the person to talk to the ISP because I had at least some knowledge of what was going on. And I finally got to talk directly to one of their management folks at the ISP who I sent him an email. I documented the trace route. I showed him the loop. I said, here's what we're seeing from the outside. Here's what we're seeing from the inside. It's clearly this issue. I can see the problem from my server in Dallas. Therefore, it's not something that's local to our neighborhood. It's a bigger issue. So he finally got it to the right people. And he called me back and said, oh, wait, you're Professor Messer. I get your emails every day for the pop quiz. I'm like, yes. Like, oh, we should have listened to you from the beginning. Like, yes, you should have. It would have been so much easier. We could have gotten it fixed. We've all been happy. Now, since then, of course, we've been rock solid. Everything's been working fine. Many of you know that I rescheduled this again. And unfortunately, it was a different set of chaos that had nothing to do with the internet at that point. It was my own family chaos. The normal stuff you would expect. So I apologize for the multiple types of problems, but I did get a good story out of it. And that's a really good example. There were a couple of things there. One was I probably talked to 4, 5, or 6 different tier 1 people because I would keep calling back. I would try the chat line. I would try to find somebody who was enabled enough to move it up the line to a router person. I never found that person. But after I got through the 3rd or 4th one, they had flagged my account as a troublemaker because I kept calling in and saying the problem isn't here. You can roll a truck. It's not going to fix it. You're going to need to send this up to the router guys to fix this problem. And they thought I was a crazy guy. They thought he's crazy. He says his network is stopping every 40 seconds and it goes out for 4 seconds. We aren't seeing anything on this side like that. It tests good to the router. He's a troublemaker. And it finally got to a point where I would call and they would be angry with me before I even talked to them because they were looking at the notes and there was probably something big on that said, kooky guy, don't listen to him, just get him off the phone. So I actually worked against myself by trying to call back and find somebody who could help. It was a lesson in frustration, but nonetheless, we made it through. Everything's working great now. This has been a fine live stream so far, hasn't it? Other than that little problem. Now, I did talk to them and they did put some processes in place at the ISP that would hopefully allow them to resolve this faster next time. We can only learn from our mistakes. And I think they did a pretty good job of doing that. They made some changes to the infrastructure here. They added some additional redundancies. There were a lot of great things they did on that. But holy cow, that was a good one. Imagine an ISP problem that wasn't even at the ISP's network. That was a real difficult one to go through. Now let's answer your questions. Enough of my stories. Let's now keep going through this list and see what you have to ask about. I'm going to look through the questions that you have submitted, and you're welcome to submit more by using the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and I will be glad to sift through those, being able to work through this. Some folks were saying that the Vevox site was not loading properly in Firefox. That's entirely possible. I don't use Firefox, and I apologize for that issue. Hopefully you were able to work around that problem and be able to figure those details out. So I apologize that Vevox was a little bit of a problem for you. I have been looking at using perhaps a different online Q&A. It's just this one has worked so well so far that, if we continue to have problems like that, I might be tempted to go to a different one that's similar but different and work through that. So hopefully that will not be. This was not Comcast, by the way. That is not my ISP. Used to be, for those of you that have been with us for a very long time, it used to be Comcast, but we moved the studio. The studio's in a different place now. There's a different set of providers, and it's a much smaller ISP. It's a very, very small ISP. However, my throughput is 10 times faster. So it's hard to argue with gigabit upload and gigabit download at the same time. Question, let's go back to, we were talking earlier about asymmetric routing and multicast and all these other things. And we got a question from Anonymous who asks, hey, wouldn't asymmetric routing cause unicast flooding? Wouldn't that be a whole different set of issues for this? Generally, we don't find that it causes unicast flooding. Because normally when you are configuring asymmetric routing, you are intentionally doing that within your organization. You have intentionally created one link that comes in one way and a completely different connection on the way out. And you've designed your network that way. And so very rarely would you do that accidentally. You would almost never walk into an organization and plug in and say, do do you know that you're asymmetrically routing? And there's no way they would say, no, we didn't know that. You would know that every time. You would have to really work. It'd be very, very difficult to set your network up to be asymmetrically routed and you not know about it. Because generally speaking, asymmetric routing breaks stuff. Not causes flooding, would not flood anything. You've still got one packet coming in and one packet going out. They're just going in and out different directions. They're using different routers for that. That's the asymmetric part of it. But the problem with asymmetric routing is that the devices doing the asymmetric routing don't know of each other. When you've configured it that way, traffic would come in and then the firewall would not allow traffic to go back out because the firewalls are stateful. A firewall sees inbound traffic, makes a note, oh, that was inbound traffic. So I should, and my firewall rule allows that inbound traffic. And now I'm going to make sure that I allow that traffic to go back out again. I don't need a specific firewall rule for that because I'm stateful. I know the state of this traffic flow coming in, so I will allow that traffic flow going out. Except the traffic flow went that way to a different firewall. Well, that firewall didn't see the traffic coming in. So how is it supposed to allow the traffic to go back out? And it blocks it. So most commonly, an accidental asymmetric routing, if you were to ever create one, would effectively block traffic and you would know immediately that you messed it up. What you normally would do is you would connect the routers together. Usually this is an active-active or firewalls together. Normally this would be an active-active configuration where both firewalls are active at the same time. Traffic can come inbound to any of them and go outbound through any of them. And the way that you keep all of the states the same is you effectively tie a cable between them. There's probably a redundancy interface. There's usually an active-active interface that you would plug in between those two firewalls. And whenever a state is determined inbound, it sends that to the other firewall so that if it goes out the other way, the firewall recognizes the state is there and it allows the traffic to flow. That's how you get around that problem. That also creates a number of different challenging engineering issues, but that's how you would solve that particular issue with asymmetric routing is you simply make sure that all of the devices that are controlling the flows of that traffic are aware of all of the states all of the time. Is that difficult? Yeah. Is it a challenge? It can be, but when it's engineered properly, runs like a champ. Runs really, really well. I've engineered quite a few of those. It does add complexity to troubleshooting because you never know where traffic is coming from and where it's going to. You kind of have to capture a lot more to be able to troubleshoot that. But if you've bought two firewalls, the argument is, why do you have one on standby that only runs if the primary firewall breaks? Why wouldn't I run both of them at the same time? Because I paid for both of them. I guess there's a logic to that, right? So that's why. That's the issue. That's the challenge, and would not cause a problem with flooding, but it would cause a problem with traffic flows in general. So I think you were probably thinking along those lines, like that would break something, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. If it's not done right, it absolutely would. Let's keep going down the list. I like these. This from Aaron who says this, if I put it on the screen, there it is. Got my A+ in May, Network Plus in July, now working on Security Plus, got an offer at a NOC. It's a Network Operations Center. I start in 2 weeks. Thanks, Professor. I didn't do anything. You did it. Congratulations on your A+. Congratulations on your Network Plus. Best of luck with your Security Plus. Most importantly, congratulations on getting your foot in the door at a Network Operations Center, which I think is really a fantastic position to be in to start off with. Plus, I like networking. Networking is where technology just took off for me the moment I saw packet capture. And I realized, wait a second, there's a whole world of things on that cable that I had no idea existed there. It's almost like looking at a microscope for the first time and you see the little amoebas. You're like, whoa, there's a whole world inside of my drinking water. Now it's the same thing on the network. There's a whole world inside of that cable. You're going to have a lot of fun at a NOC, and you're going to learn a lot, perhaps more importantly, and you're going to learn about the foundational parts of the network. Everything connects to the network. The cloud connects to the network. Your servers connect to the network. All of your users are on the network. The internet is on the network. It's a great place to learn. It's a great place to move up. You're going to do great. And congratulations on that position. I love getting those stories. I love hearing about the successes. So congratulations for that. Let's keep going on this list. Since we're talking about multicast, here's another one. This is from Manny. Manny says, broadcast storm is because of excessive broadcast or multicast traffic. So IGMP would prevent broadcast storms, right? Not actually. A broadcast storm is broadcasts. It is not multicasts. Technically, you could incorporate multicasts into the world of broadcasts and combine those together, because the ultimate result of the combination of those two things would be a performance problem on your users' workstations. But those are two very different protocols, and they work differently at the MAC address level. So I would not be so quick to put them together, especially when we talk about using IGMP snooping. IGMP snooping is only for multicasts. We still, if there's a broadcast on the network, a broadcast has to be sent to everybody. You can't filter broadcasts. They are broadcasting because they are supposed to be seen by everybody. And if you limit a broadcast, you are effectively limiting some important function of your network. So we don't ever filter broadcasts. Now, we can look at a broadcast and we can say, we got way too many broadcasts on the subnet. We need to make the subnet smaller. We need to modify whatever's making all these broadcasts. Maybe we should be using different routing protocols or whatever's sending the broadcast out. But IGMP snooping will not limit broadcasts. It will only limit where multicasts go. So IGMP snooping would have no effect on the broadcast part of the traffic. You would still have to manage that. You would still have to figure that out. And there's no one-click button in your configuration for managing broadcasts. You have to do it the hard way. You have to capture packets, look at what the broadcasts are, see where they're originating from, see what options you might have. One option would be to make the subnet smaller and decrease the size of the broadcast domain, thereby hopefully decreasing the number of broadcasts, or figure out why there are broadcasts to begin with. And that's probably the best way to go. That's probably the best thing to do is, where are these broadcasts coming from? Why am I seeing so many of them? It might be because something is not configured properly. It may be because you're using a protocol that you should not be using. Maybe you should be doing static routing instead of the routing that you're using. Normally would not be a routing protocol creating broadcast storms, but it all contributes. Maybe it's not just one thing. Maybe it's 20 things, and they're just all doing it at the same time and creating the broadcast storm. There's never a one single, here's how you fix broadcast storms. It's always a process. And IGMP snooping will have no effect on that process. Unfortunately, sadly, not going to help in the case of a broadcast storm. We don't really see so many broadcast storms these days, thankfully. I think we've been very good about recognizing broadcasts, understanding where they come from, and limiting their scope on the network. And I think a lot of protocols are a lot smarter in the way they operate these days too. Let's keep going through the questions that you are submitting. I do have some time left, so we'll keep going there in this list. Let's see. So this is someone wanting to know. Well, we'll just bring this up. This is a very good question. This is a question that from Salvador says, I want to know if your Spanish is any good. No, senor, it is not good at all. Or if I have Hispanic heritage. Sadly, I don't. Most of my family is from the Carolinas. Not a huge foreign language mecca in the Carolinas, unfortunately. I did live in Miami, the South Florida area, for about 11, 12 years. Picked up a little bit of Spanish. Most of the Spanish I get is from Disney. I can, por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas. Please stand clear of the doors. That's all I got. That's it. That is the extent of my, well, not the extent, but that's most of it. I know the dirty words. I can do those. I know when somebody's saying something mean to me. I know about that one. But I think most of my family's from the woods. I have my family's in the country. I come from North Florida, and they talk like that. And that's how most of my family talks. And it's interesting. I didn't kind of pick up that. I lived in a very small town growing up, in a very rural part of Florida. So there was very little culture other than the people that lived there that I knew about. I remember growing up, I didn't have an internet. We barely got cable television when I was in high school. So understanding different cultures this is a relatively new thing in the world, is having our view of the world the way it is. I've always wanted to learn Spanish. I've always wanted another language, but most of the language time I've spent for languages has been learning protocols. That my language that I learned was all the ones and zeros that are running across the wire. And that's worked okay for me. It would probably be better if I would learn Spanish though, and work through that. But a lot of what I did for work in South Florida was going between Palm Beach, Broward, and at the time Dade County, and being able to move around, negotiate, talk to people, figure it out. But a lot of the jobs I had in IT and in technology in general, some of them were international positions where I would go to France, I would go to Japan, I would go to Korea, I would go to Australia. I could understand most of those folks, even in Australia. But one of the things you sort of learn when you start traveling around is, first, most people are so nice, regardless of what country you go to. It's hard to find, even you go to France and people in the United States think that people in France are just rude. And they're not at all. They're the nicest people you'll find. As long as you're able to meet them halfway, you can at least learn some of the language and at least get out what you're trying to do. Most people are very patient with you. And I found out then I should probably work on languages. And what I just did was sort of pick up words here and there, but just not great with Spanish, I'm afraid. That's my own fault. And I should really work on that. I have done the online, let's go through a course, and I get through the third week and I just drop off. I got way too much going on. So I apologize that I have not done a very good job at being more bilingual, but I have done a pretty good job at least keeping up with the latest in A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, and that's really where I focus. But I am right there with you. I really should do better with my Spanish language skills. It would be a lot more useful. I live in Central Florida now. I could use some of these skills. I don't have them. So I take care of the network. Somebody else helps me with Spanish and the other languages that I have to work through. Other questions that you've submitted here. I want to be sure I get through a couple more before we run out of time. Other pieces. This would be good. So first, let's talk about this qualification. This is from Anonymous. Goes back to that question we talked about earlier about LACP, the Link Aggregation Control Protocol. Is that the same thing as NIC teaming? Network interface card teaming. And it is not. Well, it sort of is, but it isn't. Here's why. The link aggregation is a standard. It's an 802.3 standard for link aggregation, because the switch that you connect to, and you connect two switches together from different manufacturers, you can connect multiple links, configure them as link aggregation, and they will aggregate and properly send the traffic between two switches, even though those switches were made by a different manufacturer, which is great. That's the interoperability we want. That's the reason we have the IEEE standards. Well, you can do the same thing from a workstation. I have a NAS in my studio that supports link aggregation. So I have 4 gigabit interfaces on the back of my NAS. I can connect all 4 of those interfaces to a switch and configure both sides as link aggregation, and it will work at 4 gigabit per second to be able to do that. So there is a capability. You can think of that as NIC teaming. but that's not really what NIC teaming is. That's really one interface card that is supporting link aggregation. NIC teaming tends to often take the form of multiple network interface cards, multiple physical network interface cards in a server, and those multiple cards would connect to a single switch, which then might have either an active-active configuration, which sort of is link aggregation, or it would be a active standby configuration, which is normally what I would see with NIC teaming, where one of those interfaces is always active, but if something happens, somebody pulls the plug, the interface goes bad, something happens, the other one picks up and recognizes that it's no longer there, and it becomes the active one. That tends to be the more common NIC teaming configuration. Link aggregation really is talking about making multiple links look like one big link, and very often it's between multiple switches, but it can be from a single device as well, like a NAS or like your local workstation, as long as you have enough interfaces on that device to be able to have multiple links going out. I think the way that we sort of handle that these days, and a little bit easier to do, is that a lot of devices we're plugging in these days support 2.5 gig, 5 gig, or 10 gig connectivity. I have new switches in my home network that all have 10 gig interfaces on them. So I can connect my primary switch via 10 gig to my internet router. I can connect it via 10 gig to my NVR, my network video recorder for my surveillance, and it's all just running at 10 gig. I don't have to do the link aggregation any longer. But if you got older equipment, LACP or link aggregation works very well. Now, as I mentioned, some people use the term LACP to mean link aggregation. They are not the same thing. Link aggregation is the process of connecting these multiple links together and using them as one logical big connection. LACP is a protocol you can put on top of that that makes that process easier. It sort of automates and makes the management of that automatic. Think of it as an automatic routing protocol. Instead of you doing a static route, you just turn on IGMP or you just turn on EIGRP, and EIGRP handles all the routes for you. You don't have to think about it. And if you lose a route, it automatically converges and set up new routes again. You don't have to do anything. It's brilliant. And that's why we use those dynamic routing protocols. You can think of LACP as a dynamic link aggregation protocol. Sort of. Think of it that way. I'm extending that a little bit too far, but that's really what it does. You can absolutely set up link aggregation between devices and not tell it to use LACP. You would manually type it in. You would statically configure the link aggregation. Or if you're lazy like me, you say, do link aggregation, use LACP, done. And then you can plug in as many devices as you want. You plug in as many links as are defined on that. If you unplug one of those, it automatically reconfigures itself. LACP is great for that. But it is not quite the same thing as NIC teaming. There's a slight difference in those terms and a slight difference in how they are used. And we do not generally use those terms interchangeably. You would never go up to a network person and say, did you set up that NIC teaming? They're like, what are you talking about? No. Oh, link aggregation. Yes, I set up the lag. We got the lag running. The link aggregation. That's what we would be doing. So it is a different term for a different connection, a different engineering, a different use case for something like that. More questions. Let's keep going through this list. Going there, and the folks in the chat, I'm not going to talk more with my Southern accent. I promise. We won't do that. Folks back home, that's how they talk. That's how they do it. Y'all want some boiled peanuts? Yes, boiled peanuts. You boil the peanuts. They're delicious. Let's do this question. Another one from Anonymous. You've been very busy, Mr. Anonymous. What can you recommend if I want to become a field service technician? Well, I used to be a field service technician, so I can tell you about this. I have no IT experience. And what would be a good starting job or certificates to reach my goal? So field service technician, in the most common implementation or most common way that you see field service technicians is someone who is performing some technical role and they're doing it out of their car. They have to visit the facility to be able to do this. A good example of field service technicians these days are there's a group that is managed. Let's say you have a Dell laptop, and the Dell laptop, the motherboard fails in the first month after purchasing the laptop. Well, your warranty with Dell may require that Dell come to your facility and swap out that motherboard. And so they will schedule a field service technician to come to your location. They've got the box under their arm. They walk in with the box. Where's the laptop? Right there. They pull out the one screwdriver they need because they've done this a million times and they know exactly how to do this. Unscrew, 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 unscrew. Poof, back comes off. Unscrew, 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 unscrew. Boom. They get rid of the screws keeping on the motherboard. Pop. There goes the system board, the logic board for the laptop. They take the new one out of the case, pop it on, screw it on, put the back on, screw. They are done. They grab the bad board. They say, I'm off to the next one. Have a nice day. That is a field service technician. When I was a field service technician for a computer company in South Miami called AC3, no longer there, doesn't exist anymore. They had the account for the Dade County, the county of Dade, now is Miami-Dade County. They, every computer that was bought for any of the county offices, and many of you know, you've got that 111 Northwest 1st Street downtown. That is that enormous building downtown. That is all county offices. Every computer in that building sold by AC3. Every computer at every county facility throughout Dade County sold by AC3 and supported by AC3's field service technician. That was me. So I would show up at the office in the morning. They would have a list of things. Today you need to replace it. We'll do a warranty replacement on this hard drive on this system that is at the jail. Then you need to go to this facility and deliver a cable that we forgot to send to them yesterday, and they can't use their laser printer until we deliver this cable. So I was effectively a cable delivery person, which they were paying me, so that's what I did. And another one would be, and you need to do a memory upgrade on this particular system downtown. And so I would drive all over Dade County and other places, going from one place to the next, to the next, to the next. And I would collect all of my things in the morning, fill up my car, go out, do the things that were asked of me. We would replace the hard drive. Replacing a bad drive on the psych floor of the Dade County Jail was one of the more remarkable tasks that I ever had to do as a field service technician. A little scary. It was logistically challenging because you can't technically take tools in to a facility like that. So the person, my contact at the jail, met me outside, took my briefcase because they could bring tools in, but I could not. So there was a whole bunch of logistics involved there. That was the time also that when I got back to my car, I realized I had locked my keys in my car. Not good for a field service technician, but good that I was at the jail because right around the corner was the police department. They were next door. And I walked into the auto theft department and said, I've locked my keys in the car. And quite literally, the investigator in the auto theft department opened up the drawer of his desk. And inside that drawer was every tool that you would ever need to break into any car in the world. And he said, what kind of car you got? I said, I don't know. It's like this really old Dodge Colt. Field service technicians don't make a lot of money. And he said, Dodge Colt, got it. And he reached in down the bottom and pulled out the Slim Jim, pulled out that thin piece of metal, like an inch thick, inch wide, and very thin, had a hook on the end. He said, okay, let's go. I'm like, okay. We walked out to the car. He says, is this your car? I'm like, yep, there's my computer equipment in the back. Here's this in the front. And there's my keys right in the door, right in the ignition of the car. And he says, oh, okay. And he went around to the driver's side and went, pop. 5 seconds. Literally it took longer to put the Slim Jim into the windowsill than it went to poop. He just went pop, and the door unlocked, and he walked away. He goes, there you go. Like, brother, you saved me some time and money. Thank you so much. And off he went. And then I thought, my car is not safe at all. This is not, I need a better car. I need better security in my vehicle, because that was way too easy to get in. And that was my trip to the jail. By the way, if you ever have to replace a hard drive on the psych floor of the jail, it's remarkable how fast you can do that. That was the fastest hard drive replacement you have ever seen. I was like a rodeo. I was in there, zip, done. Got to go now. We are finished. Then, of course, didn't get out of there because I locked the keys in the car. The question, though, here is no IT experience. That's okay. You usually are taught these things when you start these positions. These are known to be entry-level positions. They will put you through a week of training. You will go through the process of understanding how to take the back off of the Dell laptop, what things to unscrew. Here's documentation that you can use and take with you, and you'll be very familiar with the things you need to do. Sometimes you are figuring it out in the field. Sometimes you'll show up and they go, we called you about delivering this cable, but now we're having a problem with this screen that only shows the color green. Like, why I didn't go to training for just the color green on them. Well, let's look at it. And at the time, it was the VGA. I pulled it apart and looking at it. The pins were all crunched up. I just straightened the pins out, plugged it in, everything's worked. So you often will figure this out as you go. Oh, yes, and 3 weeks of printers. That's true. They do teach you a lot about printers as a field service technician. Most of the time, mine was not working on printers or fixing broken printers, but to just simply replacing them. The printers would go to someone else at the time. And they probably don't do that anymore. You're probably expected to fix those now. Starting job certificates. I think that's a good starting job itself. Field service is a great place to start. Certificates, A+ would be a perfect certificate for someone who wanted to be a field service technician, because you learn about the hardware, you learn about operating systems. That's the world you're in as field service. And so that's probably a good place to be. Some field service techs only work on hardware, like the people at Dell that only, or whoever Dell contracts with that replaces the motherboards, they're never looking at Windows. They never even boot up the operating system. They go as far as the BIOS and they are done. So A+ is a good choice in that scenario. You don't even necessarily need to get into Network Plus or Security Plus or any of that. Your key goals are going to be the A+ certification. I think that's a good place to go for field service. Kind of sometimes I miss those days. Field service was a great job. You're in your car a lot. You're working by yourself. You got the radio turned up. You're listening to things you want to listen to. At the time, I want to say there were not any cell phones either. That may have had something to do with that. That may have helped the process a lot more. That I had to call in every so often. All right, anything new? Okay, good. I'm going to keep going. We'll keep going through this and being able to work through that. And it really was a fun job. Plus, you learn a lot. You meet a lot of people. And in fact, don't discount this too much. The job I got after the field service technician job was with an insurance company where I was in their IT department for 5 years, and they were a customer of our company. AC3 sold computers to this insurance company. So I got to meet a lot of those people as part of my normal job, and they got to know me, and they got to know, is he any good at doing this, swapping out the motherboard thing or whatever it was that I was doing. And they said, okay, well, and then when I approached them and said, look, I'm looking to get another job. Do you guys have any openings? They're like, oh, you need to come over here. Yes, we do have openings. And I ended up staying at that life insurance company for 5 years. I still don't know what we did as an insurance company. I know a little bit, but it's one of those times where I probably should have spent more time figuring out what we did as a company and then applied the technology to it. But I was very young. I was very green. I was underwater with trying to figure out mainframes and connectivity and networking and operating systems and Windows and deployments. And there was a whole different set of things. I was just trying to be a sponge. I was trying to learn as much as I can. So sometimes those field service positions turn into something else. They lead you into something else for all of those. Okay. And I told you I had a hard stop at the top of the hour. So let's do one more, and being able to work through all of these. I think if we were to look at, if we were to break this down, this is more, let's take this one because this is a pretty good one. We get these from time to time. Again, from Anonymous, who says, I heard that spanning tree protocol not as common anymore due to new technology like flex links. Is it true that STP is on its way out? Well, STP by itself, the original spanning tree protocol, is rarely used these days. But rapid spanning tree protocol is always used. It's just commonly used. Every switch supports it. You should turn it on if you haven't turned it on already. You should be, of course, engineering it properly in your environment so that you know where the root bridge is. You've configured it to be the root bridge. You've set your priorities properly. There is a little bit of work that needs to go into configuring rapid spanning tree protocol, but that is the de facto protocol. Flex links is, as I recall, I don't know that I even have switches that support flex links, but I believe they're set up to be more of a redundancy connection, sort of a primary backup between switches, which is not the same as something that prevents loops on the network. Rapid spanning tree protocol has been, and spanning tree protocol in general, broadly speaking, has been on our networks and been in use for so long because it is so good. It does exactly what they say it does. It does it extremely well. With rapid spanning tree protocol, you never even know it's running. It just works, and it works very fast. So FlexLinks is not going to replace spanning tree protocol. Spanning tree protocol is super common. Its current form is rapid spanning tree protocol, but we hardly ever tell somebody, hey, did you configure our RSTP? It's difficult to know. I couldn't even say it just then. Did you configure RSTP? Did you configure spanning tree? That's all we say. Spanning tree turned on that one? Are we running spanning tree on that switch? What is the priority setting for spanning tree on that box? You know, spanning tree is just the common thing. So it is absolutely common. It is not going away. It's not being replaced with flex links. It is so common. It has been around for so long. How are you even going to get rid of it? It's like saying, oh, IPv6 is really the hot thing now. IPv4, not really that common anymore. Nope, other way around. It's been around for so long, you're never going to be able to drag it out of the network. IP version 4 is just stuck there, and we just cannot get rid of it. As much as sometimes we would like to, although you spend enough time with IPv6 and you think, oh, I kind of like IPv4. Those days were really nice that we didn't have all of this stuff. But then you get into situations where there are broadcast storms and you think, why haven't we gotten rid of IPv4 by now? IPv6 doesn't have broadcasts. It's just multicast. Again, more challenges there and working through all of those. So spanning tree, super common. Spanning tree protocol, the old traditional original spanning tree protocol is not as common anymore. So I'm with you on that one, Anonymous. But rapid spanning tree protocol is what we use these days. We still refer to it as spanning tree protocol because it really is. And that is the one that we tend to use. It is not going away. FlexLinks is not replacing it. It's not on its way out. It is just as important. And you'll end up probably using both of those. The same way you use spanning tree protocol and trunking. The same way you use spanning tree protocol and link aggregation. You know, they all work together. They all have their purpose. We're all using them for different things. It's all serving a particular reason for existing inside of that switch. There's just a lot of technologies that we're cramming into those switches these days. And spanning tree protocol is not going away. It's something that is, it's just tried and true, and it works so well. Why would you want to get rid of it? I think that makes a lot of sense for me too. Well, speaking of getting rid of something, it's time to get rid of me. It is, we've hit the top of the hour, but I think we had a pretty good session in that first hour of Q&A. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and doing the questions and answers. There were some good ones there this month. We'll have to revisit some of those next month. And we, of course, love the second hour where you get to ask me questions. I got to go down a little bit of of things we've done in the past. A little reminiscing as we talked about locking myself out of my car and going through those. I think we got a chance to kind of catch up on other things relating to questions we had in that first hour, which was kind of a nice way to call back some of those important things and important protocols and configurations and how they're applied in the real world, how we would use them in our enterprise networks. We do one of these live streams for Network Plus every month. We'd love for you to come back next month. If you enjoyed watching this video, please consider clicking that thumbs up button. My friends at YouTube always like to look through our videos and find out which ones that people like the most. If you like these videos and you would like to support some of the things we're doing, you can do this for free by subscribing to our YouTube channel. That'd be another great way to help support us. And we're getting so close to 1 million subscribers. I would love for you to be part of that as well. Stick around. We've got a lot more to go through. Come back next month. We're going to do more questions from Network Plus. There are all new questions every month. So make sure you come back. And of course, if you want to go back through our archives, they are all on our YouTube channel. And of course, all of those questions are new every month as well. It's a great way to study up for your exams. I think next month is going to be the N10-009. We'll have to start with those. You should be able to see it in the invite that I send out. And I think we may transition over to those with our next study group, but we've still got 3 years worth of the N10-008s that you can always look through our archives and go through those if you're planning to take that exam as well. And there's a good bit of overlap between the two, so we can talk about that next month as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for being here. We will look forward to seeing you next time on our Network Plus study group. Thanks, everybody.